We're in the morning. We're back. It's the link and the one, the only Sabrina Salas, Matt Tenaya, ladies and gentlemen.
Off today, everybody. We're gonna head into the Zoom room now, where we're gonna get our weekly progress report from GDOE Superintendent Jon Fernandez. Also joining us is our education reporter Isaiah Uggan. Good morning, John.
Hi, good morning, everybody. And it seems like we was almost just yesterday when we last talked, so I don't know how much more to update, but I want to make sure to show up and see if there are any questions or anything popping up on your screens or on your radar that we can help update the community on. But I do want to just say that, we continue, to really monitor what's going on in the community and try to get ourselves back to full 5 days of instruction. So over the last week since we last spoke, we had an opportunity to meet with our high school principals, also meet with our Guam Federation of Teachers to get a better understanding of how best to approach, what we think will be, the end of this second or this Delta wave, and getting back to hopefully 5 days of instruction for all grade levels. So I think I can at least, even though we don't have a date right now to tell you, what we're looking at is the at least the target of January being the date for all grade levels to be able to return for face-to-face instruction, and that means several things have to go go right and go well. Number one, we've seen the dip in the number of cases and the positivity rate that we've seen over the past several weeks. If that trend continues to go downward, we should hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks be back to a situation where we're out of high risk based on the CDC framework that we've been following. The other thing is, and then of course, we talked last week about the supports for the schools, the canopies, the tables and chairs starting to arrive on island. We were very frustrated earlier because of you've heard about the entire supply chain, challenges globally. Well, we were seeing that in our shipments, things being stuck at the port, being delayed, vendors not being able to tell us when things were likely to arrive. Well, now we're getting more information and confirmation of when to expect some of these, volumes of support equipment and supplies that we've been anticipating. So canopies, tables, and chairs for schools that have requested that support in order to facilitate physical distancing, that's going to be helpful coming in over the next several weeks. And then I think the other piece we're waiting to hear, we've had our conversation with public health, but we're waiting to get, all the details, is once we start the vaccination availability for the 5 to 11-year-olds, we're really looking forward to helping facilitate that opportunity for families who want to get their children vaccinated, because once we do that, we can envision the opportunity to return all school children back to school by the January timeframe. The only thing that we're talking about prior to that is the potential to phase in grades prior to the elementary schools. And so we did have a conversation about phasing in high school first. Our conversation with the high school principals really was, I think they're supportive. However, they are still concerned about the physical distancing requirements and, our ability to sustain compliance with that once we return all the students. So, I think as part of that, not only will the additional supplies and equipment help, we're also looking at accelerating. I have to check and see where we are with that, but we advertised for openings for community program aides and for teacher assistants. So I think we're already through the process of trying to hire those positions. And so the sooner we can get those individuals at the school campuses, I think our high schools will feel much better in terms of being able to supervise the population on campus and cover classes and cover other responsibilities due to the fact that, COVID-19 has resulted in, of course, quarantined employees and so forth. So, again, we sat down with them, we got a list of concerns, and now we're kind of working through them to make sure that we can address all of them and help everybody be comfortable with that return. We did talk to our GFT members, and I think we're on the same page that if the vaccination efforts for the younger children go forward as we're hearing. And then by January, we can probably get everybody, back to school on a normal schedule. Prior to that, it does make sense, and we've talked about that again with high schools, maybe starting first as part of a phase-in. And I think the whole point of the phase-in is to be able to kind of, open up a few schools, make sure everything's working well, make sure everybody's, we're maintaining safety and so forth. And then, going to middle school and going to elementary school by that January timeframe. So I'm just putting it out there because even though we don't have a date for high school to start up again, we do want to say that, for all of our parents, based on all these factors, if all these factors line up as we were expecting that they will, January should be the time frame that we'll be able to get everyone back to school from pre-K all the way to high school. And as part of that, make decisions about what you need to do for your family to be ready for that, those decisions. So again, over the next couple of weeks, we anticipate further stakeholder discussions with our teachers, with our board, with our students and parents before we make some firm decisions about dates.
Right.
So let me just I'll leave it at that, and then we can happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
If you, if everything goes well and you are able to start the resumption of face-to-face for everybody in January, are you going to discontinue the other models of learning? And it'll be strictly.
I think we're gonna, at this point, we are still decided to maintain online learning, which we told parents would be available this school year. So that is anticipated to stay in place for the school year. And then as we get to next school year, we'll have to make a determination as to what online learning will look like for the following school year. I just think that for those parents to whom we indicated this would be an option for the school year and allowed them to register, that we're not at a point yet where we can pull the plug on that, because we're still trying to get kids back to school safely for that 5 days of instruction. So I think we're going to need to get everybody back, see how things go, and then make decisions about online learning once we get past that point.
You mentioned hiring. I did want to ask, when you do hire, is it with local funds or are you using education stabilization funds for hiring?
So there's a combination of funds that can be used. So some funding comes to our consolidated grant. So if there is already a program that supported, our schools that's already in place through the consolidated grant, we were able to use those programs to hire like the teacher assistants, for instance. And then for those additional positions that were not part of those original grants, but are really tied to COVID-19 response, those would be covered under the ESF or the ARP funds. I think the community program aids would be under the ESF funds at this point, and those would be the supplemental hires that were not a part of the original consolidated grant programs, but because of the additional funds are being utilized to assist schools with the COVID-19 response and maintaining safety and supervision on campus as a result of the pandemic.
I do want to ask one other thing, and this is because whatever happened to the third-party fiduciary agent, because as a result of the GDOE's high-risk status, and what is the third-party fiduciary's involvement in the management of, say, these federal funds like the ESF or ARP money? Are they involved with that at all?
Yes, so the third party is still a requirement for USDOE. What we were trying to do prior to the pandemic was get on a path towards removing or steadily removing their oversight over the federal funds as part of a return to DOE, returning the accountability and the responsibility fully to Guam DOE. Because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do on-site visits last year, so we did do a virtual monitoring. And as part of that virtual monitoring with USDOE, we did make some improvements. For instance, having DOE take over the property inventory completely this year. But however, the third party is still in place, and has not been removed. So they are under contract as they have been over the last several years. Additionally, because the special conditions apply generally to all U.S. DOE funds, the third party is involved when it comes to funding under the CARES Act and under the American Rescue Plan. So they do have a responsibility and a role in ensuring that there is proper accountability for all those funds as well.
I'm going to defer to Isaiah again.
Okay.
Isaiah?
Good morning, Superintendent Fernandez. Some schools began COVID testing, and some schools have not received training or kits. And I know, excuse me, I know that the department had trained 114 staff members to administer the test. Do you guys anticipate any testing kit shortages?
So right now, yeah, that's a good question. And so I did hear the fact that other schools are starting their student testing, and so just want to confirm that we have not begun student testing at this point, because we just recently, we're in the second week now of doing the employee testing side of things. And as part of that, what was good was that every week we we did the first week, and of course last week we had an after action report just to make sure things are moving smoothly and to discuss any issues that might be ahead of us. So what we did find at this particular point was, right now we're operating with the Abbott Binax Now test kits. And I know there's been some stories out there about whether they're expired or not expired. Well, our understanding from public health is that the extension of the expiration date goes until, I believe, November 17th for the kits that we have on our campuses. So that gives us a few more weeks with those test kits. But what we've been provided is actually not a shortage. It's excess of test kits that are going to be expiring on that date. So what we're doing right now is actually identifying what we're going to need for the next 3 weeks and trying to make sure we return the other test kits to public health so that they can use it in any of the other testing going on around the island. So the question is going to be what we do after the 17th, if we're going to still be able to screen employees or need to screen employees. We did ask public health whether we were going to need to find a way to procure test kits, but we were informed that they would go ahead and take care of that under this grant that they have with the CDC, not just for us, but for all private nonprofit schools. So my understanding is that they've gone to procure those test kits, and those test kits are not going to, I don't believe they're going to be Abbott Binax Now, because I think those are no longer going to be available. My understanding is they were looking at a test, I think it was called Q Health, which is a salival COVID-19 test. So if that's the case, and that's confirmed and they get that in, I actually think there's going to be a good transition, because we've had a lot of employees and parents saying that, hey, you know what, if we're going to do any screening and testing, we're concerned about it, but if we do it, we do prefer that you do a less invasive test. And people have been pushing us to look at the salival test as an option. So if that becomes available, that might, assist us with some of those concerns. So again, November 17th is the expiration date on the kits that we have. And again, based on the number of employees we're testing, we're not going to need all the tests that they gave us. So we're going to be returning those boxes of tests back to public health for their use.
How many are you returning that are in excess?
I don't have the exact number now, but I think the schools, basically we dispersed to the schools, and then we maintained whatever it was supply we had in excess of that at the central office to return. So I don't have a count at this particular point. Apparently you can't take the number of, I guess what happens is in every box there are a number of test kits, and you're not supposed to separate the test kits from the box. So we have an unopened box, we're going to need to keep that at the school site. But but the unopened boxes that we had as part of that delivery, we'll be returning. So I don't have a count at the moment, or can't recall offhand. but we had a good supply that needed to be returned.
Superintendent, when do you guys anticipate having to implement your COVID testing plan? I know you mentioned last time it was in January. And have you heard from public health in regards to your guys' approval or disapproval? Anything you guys need to change?
Well, I think the challenge is because we're the biggest agency, and because what we do in DOE is really is in the support of public health, right? I mean, when we screen a large number of people in our agency, it's a large part of the community in general that gets screened. So there were a couple of things that we needed to get through to finalize. To lock down all the details behind screening and testing. One was to go through the employee screening and to understand what we needed to do to make that a smooth operation. So in the first week, we did get, we definitely had some issues that we needed to sort out. Number one was just the importance of the division, whether it's a division or a school administrator, for that administrator to oversee those operations very intently, because what we didn't want was our school nurses or other staff being the front line for people who were not happy with the decisions or who were unwilling. So we learned, we got a lot of, maybe questions or concerns or, disagreement, right? So we definitely wanted to make sure we prepared ourselves. If you're going to go to a wider screening, being able to deal with parents, make sure that we're providing the right information and so forth. We had concerns about whether we should do this outside or inside. Some schools prefer to do it outside because of the fact that you're testing, and it's because it's outdoors, less concern about any transmission of the virus within a small area. And then there were concerns about is this really done with privacy and confidentiality in mind? So trying to balance those as well. So several of those types of issues, not necessarily bad issues we needed to kind of deal with and figure out how to address appropriately. Those are gonna actually translate into the issues with students. So what we're learning now, we plan to take back after a couple of weeks, share with public health, and then be able to kind of decide how we want to do student testing and screening, which again, needs to be implemented probably by January on our read of the time frame. The other thing that's going to be a concern is just the fact that we've got so many employees involved in these activities that we have to be concerned about what this means for having them divert from their regular duties and responsibilities to take on these additional tasks. So the reason why that's important is because we're doing that from Monday through Wednesday every week, until that mandate goes away. Number two, we just met with public health about helping them with vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds. That's going to take place very soon. And then we're talking about, implementing a screening of, 2,000 to 3,000 students, at a time. One of the things that we just need to have a discussion about is that it is taking a toll on our employees and on their duties and responsibilities to focus on our day-to-day educational, settings. And then, so when we add the public health responsibilities on top of it, we need to make sure that we're balancing that all so that we don't just continue to burn out our school nurses and the other school employees who are part of this effort. So yeah, so Isaiah, I guess the short answer to this is that we are prepared to, by January, make sure that we have a plan, and then we're not rushing there because we have several things that need to be addressed that all require the same people, the school nurses and other trained employees, to support the public health efforts. If we did this all at once, I think we'd collapse probably at this particular point. So that's why it's taken us some time on purpose to make sure that we take into consideration what we're asking our employees to do and trying to balance that against the responsibilities that are being asked of them, going forward. So I just wanted to remember, so it's employee testing, helping with the 5 to 11 vaccination, which is going to be a big push, and then, moving to student screening testing at the end of that by January.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you guys began testing employees last week. I wanted to see, was there more employees who weren't willing to get tested or get vaccinated, or I just wanted the latest update on the 3 who were sent home and put on leave.
No, it's still status quo. We didn't get any further employees who are. I'm getting updates right now just in case things have changed, but it's still at the same number who are at home due to a decision not to vaccinate or submit to weekly testing.
Okay, and moving on to your budget shortfall, you were looking at $20 to $30 million in your budget shortfall for this current fiscal year. I just wanted to get an update because you have to provide a report to GED it's almost 30 days now.
Yeah, you're right. So by the end of the week, we'll have a report to the board about our proposed fix to the budget. And so in 5 minutes, once we get off here, I'm on another call with our federal programs and with our deputy for finance to walk through some of those details to make sure that those numbers line up. So it is going to take probably a combination of the use of federal funds to plug the gap as well as finding additional savings. So it'll be a combination of both savings and revenue to get us through this budget year. And so we're happy that we have some federal funds to be able to support those efforts. We want those federal funds, because of the purposes of those federal funds, to be aligned with the expenses that take place at the school sites. So they really need to be. We really want those funds to be school based. So we're looking at all the contracts and utilities and so forth that are being that are attributed to the schools. Possibly, looking at using the federal funds to support the pay for our nurses this year. So there are things like that we're putting on the table to finalize this week, and then we'll give it to the board and allow them to have their input by the end of this week. So I think November 6th was the due date that I was tracking. So definitely you're tracking it alongside me. So once we get that out, I'm sure we'll be happy to share that publicly so everybody understands how things are going to be addressed this coming year.
All right. Thanks, John. Just one quick question from me, and that is regarding the annual State of Education. I think it's around this time frame that you usually, do a presentation. Are you still doing that, or?
Well, the actual documents. First of all, the annual State of Public Education is a physical report along with school performance report cards. And so that is a document that is circulated, and we'll make sure that you get a copy and all the media get a copy. The presentation itself usually happens separately. And if we do any of that, I know we're still in discussion. It's probably going to be a virtual presentation, but we haven't finalized those plans. It's not the requirement is that there be a document done and submitted for the public's consumption. The additional extra that's really not required, but that we've done in the past, has been to do a presentation for the general public, so we can break down some of those numbers and findings, in a more customer friendly way for our parents and our stakeholders. So if we do that, we haven't really decided because we just have so many things going on, but it might be good to do something virtually so we can put it up on Facebook and just have people, understand what the last year has meant for our students. So we'll look forward to having that sent to all of you, though, at least to be able to have the basic information.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I know you got to get to your briefing and meeting with USDOE.
Yeah,
so
this is a big meeting because as Isaiah noted, you don't normally come on here and get reminded that you got a work deadline that you got to meet. so thanks, Isaiah, for keeping me on track. But after this couple minutes, I'll be on with my team saying we got to get this finished, pencils down, so we can finalize a report to the board, and that's what we're trying to get done this week.
All right. Take care, John. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Superintendent Fernandez.
Thanks, Isaiah. Bye-bye.
And we're going to take a quick break, but up next, we're heading to the CNMI. Tomas Manglonia is going to join us back in studio. We're going to be talking with the Special Assistant, the CNMI Governor for Military Affairs, Glenna Palacios. Stay tuned.